Folks, we warned you. We got Ric Peri from AEA, Mr. Regulation. Once we start them, we're not quite sure we can stop them, but we'll do our best. We'll see what happens here. Ric, welcome to AEA Live, and more important, to the Aero-News insanity that occurs every year with AEA.
Thank you. Nice being here.
Well, we always have a ball talking to you, no kidding. But right now is a very interesting time to be talking to somebody who is, shall we say, over-acquainted with the regulation process.
Yeah.
And also very well acquainted with the Washington process, such as it is. Okay, just let's keep it clean, but how bad is it out there right now?
It's a loaded question, okay?
Have you known me to do anything else with
No,
you? I mean,
no.
serially. Ugh.
So, I mean, you know, I've done, I don't know, 6, 7 administrations now. A lot of it is normal. A lot of it is not abnormal, but aggressively normal. And a lot of it is the sky's falling in the macro, which stresses everybody out,
Yep.
but not as impactful in the micro at the individual agencies, etc. So a lot of it you just have to distance yourself from the noise. As we know, every administration, there's routines. An executive order is signed by the president. The president rotates out, executive orders go away. New president comes in, signs his own executive orders. Quite often, it focuses on the interest of that administration. So that's why you see a lot of this. The current administration is wonderfully interesting because, first of all, it's the first split administration of anybody that's alive today, right? You have to go back 100 years to find the last one. So everybody looks at this and goes, oh my God. And Wednesday before we came here, there were 142 executive orders. And it appears as if, well, where'd this come from, right? What people don't realize is this is not year 1 of an administration.
Oh no.
This is year 5 of
Absolutely.
an administration. And what this administration...
And he's had 4 years in the interim.
Exactly.
To think about it.
And so what this administration has that no other administration in recent history has had is a 4-year start, a 4-year what went right, what went wrong, how would I do it over again, how would I do it differently if I could do it over again. And so when you go into year 5, all of this is orchestrated to fulfill the promises of the election.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of boil all that down, it almost normalizes a lot of that, okay? That's not to say that, you know, the reduction in force isn't causing a lot of angst, you know?
Yeah.
You know, but that's also part of what was promised. If you look at the growth of the federal workforce over the last 4 years, coming out of COVID, a lot of that kind of stuff, a simple reversal of that creates a lot of what we're seeing today. And so...
And yet at the same time, this is the stuff that previous administrations were arguing for but never did, and
Right.
here we are.
Well,
And
when it comes...
that provides some real interesting counterpoint.
You know, the fraud and abuse part of it, which is, and it's a terrible thing to say, but the humor of the fraud and abuse part of it is that there's not a politician that I'm aware of that hasn't raised that issue as part of a campaign promise sometime in their career.
Yeah.
And yet, when somebody actually does it,
The sky is falling.
Well, but it comes down to NIMBY.
Yeah.
Okay? No, we want this, but not in my backyard,
Yeah.
right? No, this is my pet item. And so it's an interesting time, to say the least.
Let's talk a little bit of specifics. I've got people right and left battering down my email addresses going, okay, what the blank is going on with Mosaic? It's what light general aviation or mid-general aviation and sport aviation have been looking for forever. It's a game changer for a lot of things, and yet we've been led up the bridle path and nobody has said I do. What can we expect? Ric Peri prognostication.
Best guess, because nobody knows. So there's 3 executive orders I'll point out. The first executive order was a automatic holding of every rulemaking that had not been published in the Federal Register. Okay? So it could have gone completely through the 5-year process, and at the 11th hour and 57th minute,
Yeah. We're still hosed.
it basically draws it all back and has a mandatory review by the Secretary of Transportation, the Office of Management and Budget, and primarily Office of Secretary of Transportation, Office of Management and Budget, and implementing this administration's vision of things. Okay, doesn't change a lot of content, but it will revise things. Realizing that in the case of the FAA, the majority of the FAA rulemaking has to jump through some 13 or 14 different regulatory hurdles that apply to the FAA, not to industry, okay? They have to do Paperwork Reduction Act. They have, all these different laws that a executive office has to go through. And so they're reviewed twice in the process. Once during the NPRM process, before the NPRM is published, it's reviewed to make sure that it conforms to the requirements. And then after it goes to public comment, comes back in and is revised and gets ready for republication. The last step before the Federal Register is, again, these executive offices, okay? Well, so first executive order comes out and says, all right, cease and desist everything that has not been published en route. That's not new, okay?
No.
Every administration does that. And so what we end up with is that the last 3 months of one administration will pull back on a lot of routine stuff and really focus on high priority stuff.
Okay.
The first 3 months of a new administration reviews everything from the past administration to make sure it's aligned with where we want to be, okay? And so this is normal. The other 2 executive orders, one is, so in the president's first term, we had a mandate for a 2-to-1 reduction of regulations for every new regulation. Keeping in mind, this administration prides itself as being pro-business.
Right.
So they want to reduce the cost of government to businesses. And so first term, 2 for 1. I read something not too long ago that said that he actually accomplished 2.6 for 1.
Wow.
That's macro. That's not 2 for 1 in the FAA.
Yeah.
That's macro. That's government. It's executive branch holistically. Now, this term, he went for the long ball, and he's going for 10 for 1. Okay? So that means for every regulation, policy, and guidance, 10 have to be pulled. Now again, it's macro, not micro. I was part of the committee that looked at the FAA the last time and identified opportunities to pull some legacy regulations that simply didn't apply anymore, right? So we created that list. That list exists today, so that's there. The third executive order is a mandate for a net zero.
Okay.
All right? And what that one is saying is, we've got this 10-to-1. Doesn't matter what you do. At the end of the fiscal year, there will be no new costs to business. Okay? So we've got these three things that is being reviewed by the Office of Secretary of Transportation as well as OMB. All right? So when we look at Mosaic, all of this stuff has to go back through this process again. My crystal ball says I don't expect Mosaic at Oshkosh, which I did.
Yeah,
okay.
same here.
I kind of expected that was going to be the highlight. That was our focus.
That was what everybody was aiming for, and we know the FAA was as well.
I do not anticipate that.
Okay.
Now, we do have some positives that have happened with the first 2 months of the administration. Secretary Duffy was announced and confirmed very quickly.
Yes.
So the Secretary has put his office in place to allow for this throughput of information. So that helps those rulemakings because that gives it an office to do the reviews with, okay? Now, the downside is that on the FAA side of things, most of the senior leadership in the FAA in aviation safety, well, not just aviation safety, but the administrator and the aviation safety offices are all acting. And so they tend to continue day-to-day operations, but don't really have the ability to put people in place to really move this process through. And so that's a negative, but the Secretary of Transportation is a positive. And so it may not be quite as long as I anticipate, but I would be surprised to see much rule other than just basic ADs and basic immediate action things. I would not anticipate seeing things until third quarter at the earliest, realistically fourth quarter.
But this year.
That's a long answer for you, but
No, and it's on point. Could make it in time for our fly-in in November, so we'll see.
Yes.
That would be cool. Wow. So, more generically, especially being here, how does the avionics community fare for the near future?
overall, I think there's a lot of positives. A couple of negatives. Unfortunately, coming out of COVID in the last administration, we had a pretty significant retirement evolution, and we ended up losing a lot of very valuable talent.
Indeed.
That talent hasn't completely been rebuilt yet. And so, they haven't fully hired the replacements for everything that was there. And what we're seeing right now is that because of the angst, if you will, of all of the activity in Washington, and you can blame Doge if you want, or you blame anything else, but it's basically the accountability, the reduction in force, if you're not doing your job, don't do it.
Yeah.
You have to come back to the office. All of those things together create a lot of anxiety. That anxiety is pushing two general categories of talent to consider leaving the agency. Mm-hmm. One is those remote workers who have a viable reason to be remote,
Yeah.
whether it be medical or whatever. And those people are having to deal with a bureaucracy, and they're just fed up with it, and they go, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So we lose a talent pool because of that. The other side of it is that because we've been living with this remote work as a result of COVID, we have a lot of people who have gotten very comfortable working from home. They have a routine built around working from home. They don't have to take their children to daycare, all these other things that go with it. They're available to do soccer practice because they don't have an hour and a half commute, to get in and out of DC. And so what we're seeing is that there's a certain, the anxiety is driving retirements that may not have been there before, to people put in retirement. And so again, we have a bit of a brain drain, a talent drain in this process. We haven't completely recovered from the last one, and now we have another one on top of it. It's a long way to say that as we are doing certifications, we don't have the talent pool within the agency to be able to efficiently and effectively do certifications on design of products and the design of installations.
Well, Rick, that's a hell of a note to close on, but it'll do for now. I will definitely be reaching out to you as time goes on, maybe with a couple of sources of our own that may help you. Reaching out to Elon every chance I get, and we'll see what happens. But make a long story short, that's kind of way below his pay grade.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we sure appreciate the time to talk to you. You've got more experience in this realm than any 10 people I know, any 100 people I know. It's always been entertaining, if not a little frustrating, to talk to you.
Yeah.
We thank you for everything. We look forward to seeing you in the future, and I guess we'll catch you. You coming to Sun and Fun?
I am not.
Oshkosh?
I am.
We'll see you at Oshkosh.
Sounds
then.
good.
Rick, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 68th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Phoenix, Arizona, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors: